Okay, I've got another question. This one is from GenX Banter, who asks, can modern women be satisfied living a more trad family life? Trad is in scare quotes. I'm going to give a qualified yes answer because I think it is important to remember that there's a lot of personal variation. Some women are more temperamentally ill-disposed towards motherhood. They just don't like children as much. They don't feel as broody. Some women are more frustrated intellectually by the stay-at-home mum lifestyle. There are lots of personality factors at play. The problem, I think, though, with adjudicating whether or not you personally fall into that category, I think there are two problems. One is that you have no idea how much you're going to love your children and how it's going to feel to desperately want to be with your children all the time until you've had them. It's just very, very difficult to imagine that on an emotional level. So you might plan out your future life trajectory with this one very important missing emotional piece, which is that you don't know what it's going to feel like to be a mother. And I'd say it's 99% of the time, just anecdotally in my experience, women want to be at home with their children more than they previously thought they wanted to be at home with their children. So that's one factor. The other factor is that women in positions of influence in public life are disproportionately women who are not well disposed towards that trad lifestyle. Partly because women who have children are less likely to be in public life, are less likely to be doing influential jobs and doing jobs full stop because they're at home with their children. They might return to public life later, then their advice to younger women is not taken as seriously because they're then older, and so it's considered less relevant. So basically, overwhelmingly, the women that you are seeing on TV, on radio, writing books, all of this kind of stuff, right, present company accepted, are women in their 20s and 30s and women who don't have children. So that and women who are likely to be less temperamentally well disposed towards the trad feminine life course because they're probably ambitious, they're competitive, they have all of these quite masculine traits which are very useful if you're trying to get ahead in a very competitive industry, but probably mean that you're not likely to be very satisfied with the stay-at-home mum lifestyle. Now, as always, I'm never advocating for like the very, very trad, women shut out of public life, women having no control over their finances, unable to own property. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the kind of stay-at-home mum lifestyle. I'm talking about women who, when they have young children, not using paid childcare, having some family help, but otherwise looking after their children themselves, spending the day with their children and with other mums, and being the CEO of the house in terms of managing all the domestic stuff. Right? It is it's a lifestyle that, if you are, clearly, if you are temperamentally not suited to it, you can find very stifling, and there is absolutely no shortage of women who are willing to trash that lifestyle. My strong suspicion is it's not because there's anything inherently bad about it. It's not because there's anything inherently bad about going to playgroups and going to the supermarket and doing all this kind of day-to-day domestic mothering stuff. It's because it's low status. It's because it's been consigned to the low status position, and that low status position is rarefied again and again and again by the insistence of most branches of feminism that it's intellectually stifling. The thing is about the intellectually stifling point, that is not the priority for most women. And again, it's that problem of having people in positions of cultural influence, making important decisions in politics, business, etc., overwhelmingly are very intelligent people who really, really highly value having an intellectually stimulating life. It's very hard for those people, and I'm in that category, I of course I am, but it's very hard for those people to imagine feeling differently, thinking that actually finding it more fulfilling to spend the morning with your children than to spend your morning reading the London Review of Books or whatever. I think that's it's a mindset difference that is so. I mean, it sounds, even to say it sounds patronizing. How could you suggest that not everyone gets as much pleasure from intellectual life as I do, right? But it's true. It's evidently true that people have the amount of value that is placed on that specific area of life is hugely warped by one's own intellect. And so the decision that's been made, this is what frustrates me, is that the decision that's been made within politics, within culture, I'm thinking particularly of the UK political context, but this is true elsewhere. The decision that's been made is that it is wrong, it is regressive to do anything in terms of our tax system, policy making, that will channel women towards a stay-at-home mum lifestyle, when women could otherwise be channeled towards going out to work and putting their children in childcare, or not having children at all, right, in practice. Our policy is not neutral on that. Our policy has decided quite definitively that it is preferable for women to go out to work. And, some of that is to do with the fact that the Treasury gets more revenue from, you pay tax when you go to work, and you also pay tax when you pay for childcare, and then the people who provide childcare services pay tax. The Treasury's coffers become much more full when you have a woman in work rather than a woman at home. It's partly that. It's also partly, I think, that there's just this very ingrained view that the feminine mystique, what Betty Friedan described in the 1960s, of women being stuck at home. Women stuck at home being lonely. I mean, if you read The Feminine Mystique, one of the things that's actually really interesting about it is that many of the women who she interviews, their children are in school. So it's not actually like they're overwhelmed with the work of the home. It's not as though they are run off their feet because they have so many young children around them. Often, actually, these are women who have 2 kids, and the kids are in school. And the problem that they're finding, actually, is the kids go to school and they're out of the house for several hours, 6 hours a day or whatever it is. And they don't feel like they have anything to do, and they feel lonely. The big problem, often described in The Feminine Mystique, is actually to do with suburban loneliness and internal migration within America having generated this problem, where people were living far away from their families and the people they'd grown up with. If that kind of fearsome image of the isolated stay-at-home mum is so seared on the cultural imagination of people in positions of influence, that anything that might nudge a woman towards choosing that route over choosing, the imagined alternative, which is always fulfilling work. I would say that probably, for me personally, knowing as I do how much I love being with little children in general and with my son in particular, I think I would choose to be a stay-at-home mum over 99% of jobs. I mean, I do happen to do an unusually interesting, flexible job that is orientated around my interests, right? The vast majority of jobs, including all the jobs that I've done to date, except this one, I would prefer to be at home with my children rather than do those jobs, right? I don't think you hear that said very often publicly, but it's true. It makes me very frustrated that really all forms of feminism, except for this precious slice of maternal feminism, which has been kind of clinging on down the decades, down the centuries, has decided on behalf of womankind that it's not just that the lives of stay-at-home mums could be made better by making them less financially vulnerable, by providing local services, by alleviating loneliness, all of the various problems. I'm not saying it's a lifestyle without problems, any less than being an employee is without its problems. But the decision has been that is an inherently unhappy state for women. And I think that there may be some cases where that's true. There may be some women who are just never going to like it. I think, though, that for many, probably most, maybe the overwhelming majority of women, it's actually preferable to most jobs, and is in fact possibly the most satisfying way that you can spend your time. I certainly find, I've said this before, that a day that I spent at home, being a stay-at-home mum, It's often tiring, it's sometimes stressful, there are downsides, but I reach the end of the day with a feeling of satisfaction and like I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, a feeling of some kind of rightness that I don't feel on days when I'm out of the house all day. And I really don't feel on days that I'm traveling and away from home. I really don't like those days. There's a kind of satisfaction that can be gleaned from the quote trad, right? Mildly to moderately trad, let's say, lifestyle that I think actually, yes, most women, vast majority of women probably could be satisfied with. And I think it's an injustice that we don't make that more accessible to most families.